Welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy. In the VIVARANA series, we are going to discuss today 3rd, 4th and 5th questions of GS3 which held in 2024 mains examination. So the third question is like this: what are the factors responsible for the successful implementation of land reforms in some parts of country? Elaborate. This is a 10-marker question, and if you want to locate this in your syllabus, it is mentioned in the GS3 syllabus, directly mentioned topic, that is the land reforms in India. So this question has been taken from that particular topic. Now, if you see the question, it has to be, it is somewhat direct question where you have to introduce the question with explaining about the land reform and its significance. Then in which among the parts of the India where this land reform policies were successful, that has to be mentioned using the map. Third part would be what were the factors responsible for some successful implementation. At the end, you can have the way forward based conclusion. So let us try to see that the which points can be written in this particular question. In the introduction, either two ways you can write the introduction. One is the define land reforms, like land reforms, what is mean by the land reforms, like holistic reforms in the sectors of land, for example, tenancy reform, zamindari abolition reform, making the land sustainable. Those all things are covered under the land reform. So that definition based land reform introduction can be written. The second way of introducing this can be, you can use that as we know that the first Constitutional Amendment Act was intended to bring land reforms in India by introducing 9th schedule in the Constitution. We know this thing, right? So that shows the significance of land reforms since the independence of India. So that way also, if you want, you can introduce this particular question. In the body part 1, you need to explain about where this land reform policy was successful in India. So we have to make headings like successful implementation of land reforms. This you need to show, as we know there are few states where land reform policies were very, very successful. Better to draw a map here in the sides. For example, you can make a small map here. Small map, draw a small map, and in this map you can represent the different parts. For example, West Bengal, we know it was successful. It was successful in the Kerala. It was successful in the some part of Andhra Pradesh also. So this way you can show like, okay, some parts of country where land reforms were successful. And if you want, you can mention here only like the why it was considered as a successful. For example, here there was a West Bengal Land Reforms Act 1955 was enacted, 1956 was enacted by the West Bengal government. For example, Land Reform Act 1956. Also there was Operation Bharga, which led to the success of land reforms in this particular part. Here there was Bhudan movement, which was very popular by the Vinoba Bhave, which led to the positive development in this region. Here the success was, here in the Kerala, land digitization, land record digitization was one of the successful event in this part. So most of the success in India, some points you can mention here, is that abolition of zamindari, tenancy reform, rights given to sharecroppers. These were the some of the reforms which were successful in the first phase of land reform. However, in the second phase of land reform, there were successful land reform activities, for example, land record modernization in the Kerala, Karnataka, like we have the Bhumi project, those kind of project led to the success. We brought the land reform in the forest land reforms through Forest Rights Act 2006, which was implemented in some of the states like Odisha. So that can also be mentioned. Along with that, you can also talk about the women rights over the land. So these are the new generation land reforms which was brought by the different states as well as the central government. However, their success in the different parts of the country were different. Then the second part of this way you can address the first part of the question. The second part of the question is asking about what were the factors responsible for such success of land reforms. So the factors you can mention, factors responsible for such success. So this would be body part 2. Here you have to mention the diverse dimension which can be written here. For example, you can start with the legislative measures taken. For example, I told like the West Bengal Tenancy Reform Act, Land Jamindari Abolition Reform Act. These kind of legislations were provided by not only the parliament but also the state legislative assembly. So legislative measures led to the success of this kind of reform. Then there was political will which created a very significant role in the success. For example, Operation Bharga was launched in the West Bengal. That shows the political will. Then comes is the administrative efficiency, which was different in the different parts of the country. Some of the states like in the West Bengal as well as in the Madras, these kind of states had the better administrative experience which was utilized for the better implementation of the laws created for the land reforms. Then the fourth you can talk about like the political mobilization, and the people's mobilization in the form of different protests, different movements. For example, you can give example of Tebhaga movement which was there in 1950s. Then you can also talk about here Naxalbari movement in 1967, which started in the Naxalbari of the West Bengal. That also created some kind of political pressure on the government to bring the land reforms in those parts of the country. Then the fifth you can definitely talk here about the ethical and the moral, basically the moral appeal made by some enlightened professionals or enlightened politicians. For example, Vinoba Bhave. The Vinoba Bhave's Gramdan and Bhudan movement actually created the positive impact not only the people but also in the politicians and the zamindars, which helped them to change their viewpoint regarding the land reform. That also facilitated the success of land reforms. And this was started in the Andhra Pradesh, and that region was impacted by this kind of movement, Bhudan movement of Vinoba Bhave. So that point can also be written here. Along with these things, there is judicial backing also. There was judicial support. For example, in Sankari Prasad case of 1951, government Supreme Court actually upheld the constitutional validity of taking away the right to property and inclusion of Schedule 9. These kind of act which was brought in order to implement the land reform policies was upheld by the Supreme Court. So that also created these factors actually helped the success of land reforms in India. In the conclusion, you can definitely talk about like there is one quote of V.R. Ambedkar. In the conclusion, you can use that, which says that land reform is not just the economic requirement, but also it is a moral imperative, said by the Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, which shows the significance of land reforms in India. That is the one way of concluding this particular question. However, you can conclude this particular question in the different ways. You can also give the way forward. That is, what is the you can mention here few the present day challenges in land reforms in India. Then you can suggest some measures like the digitization and digitization of land records, use of the advanced technologies in the land records management, fast track courts for the land dispute mitigation, land consolidation. There are several measures which can be taken to bring the land reforms, specifically considering the social benefit, economic benefit, as well as the ecological sustainability of land. So these way you can conclude this particular question. Okay, so this is about the third question, that is related to land reforms.